Spanx started way before I cut the feet out of my pantyhose. That's the soundbite in the press that everybody's talked about for almost 20 years. But it actually started fundamentally on when I was 16. I worked on mindset for myself, and I'm such a believer in mindset is almost everything. And it just happened to be a set of circumstances. I was riding my bike with one of my best friends at 16, and she was run over by a car and killed in front of me. And then a few months later, my dad left home and my parents separated and ultimately got divorced. And when my dad moved out, he came into my bedroom and he handed me a cassette tape series called How to Be a No Limit Person by Wayne Dyer. And he said, "Sweetie, I wish I discovered this when I was your age instead of the age of 40. And then he moved out. And so I started listening to this How to Be a No Limit Person, which was talking about visualization, law of attraction, not caring about what other people think about you, the fear, not being consumed by the fear of failure. And it just, the clouds parted for me. And I thought, I've spent a lot of time being taught what to think, but no one's really teaching me how to think. And at 16, that was so incredibly important. So in this digital platform, it's kind of passing on a lot of these insights that deal with mindset that I think is the real reason that Spanx exists. I wanted to be a lawyer, and I'm a terrible test taker. After I basically bombed the LSAT, I tried out at Disney World to be goofy, and you have to be 5'8", and I'm only 5'6", so I'm the height of a chipmunk, which was like, I guess you could say, sort of felt a little bit like rock bottom. I wasn't gonna be a lawyer, and I was too short to be goofy. There was a moment when I was selling fax machines door to door, and I was constantly being escorted out of buildings, or sometimes people would rip up my business card in my face, which was a typical occurrence. And one day I pulled off the side of the road, and I literally thought, I'm in the wrong movie. Like, this is not my life. Cut, call the director, call the producer. How did this happen? This is not supposed to be my life. I went home that day and wrote in my apartment, in my notebook, what my strengths were. And the only thing basically in the strength column that I was sure about was sales. And I said, okay, and what can I do with that? And I ended up writing, I want to invent a product that I can sell to millions of people that will make them feel better. And it was 2 years later that I cut the feet out of control top pantyhose to wear white pants to a party. Traditional business has been very masculine, and it's been a very masculine model. And so I approach it, and when I say that, when I first started Spanx, I was maybe 3 months in, and I was at a cocktail party, and these 3 guys came up to me and they said, "Sarah, so we heard you invented something." And I said, "Yes, I did." And they said, "Great." And one guy, pat me on the shoulder and he said, "I hope you're ready to go to war." And he said, "Business is war." And I just remember looking at him and thinking, why? And I went home that night and sat in my apartment, and I sat on the floor and I was thinking about all that was happening, and this risk I was taking, and potentially leaving my job and the secure income, and just thinking, I don't want to go to war. And this voice inside of my head just said, do it different. Like, take a totally different approach. And so I have approached Spanx with very feminine principles, and there's the feminine and the masculine in all of us, and it's all super important. But using vulnerability, really operating off of intuition. If the data is trumping my intuition, I go with my intuition almost every time. So that's not typical in a corporate environment. So those kinds of things that I've done, like being vulnerable with the business. I felt as a consumer, I just felt like companies aren't really talking to me the way that I want them to talk to me. I'm not listening to them. I don't believe them. I don't necessarily trust them. And so when I started Spanx, I, instead of talking, at my customer, I wanted to talk to them. And I made myself vulnerable. So I joked and said I used my own butt in the before and after picture, but I had felt like companies were operating in this, like, we need to be perfect and you need to see us as the authority and you need me, and that's how I'm gonna sell you product. And I was like, hey, like, I'm one of you. Like, here's what's happening, here's what it does for me, this is why it works. And it was just a very different approach, and I felt like consumers became really connected and really loyal, and probably part of the reason why Spanx as a brand didn't need to advertise for we haven't spent any money on advertising in 16 years. because of a lot of it's word of mouth from women sharing with other women.
The process of me cutting the feet out of my pantyhose while trying to get the prototype made before I launched it was 2 years. So there was a year solid of me driving in North Carolina on the weekends and at night, or taking time off from work to go and work on the prototype, get it made. I learned so many things that I didn't know as a consumer. It had never dawned on me, that men were making all of our undergarments. So I learned very quickly that the industry had been taking an average waistband size between a small and an extra large and putting the same waistband on every pair. Exactly, that's what I said. I said, that's not working. We're really uncomfortable. And they were doing it to cut cost in production. So I immediately changed that. In a Spanx waistband, a size small gets a small, medium gets a medium, and so on. Makes perfect sense, right? I also realized that they had been putting a tiny rubber cord inside the waistbands that had been there forever. Well, we had made so many advancements in yarns that they no longer needed the rubber cord, but no one had stopped to say, do we still need to put this? So I immediately took the rubber cord out of it. And another thing I learned was the way that they were doing sizing was just blew me away. They would figure out a size by putting them on plastic forms. And they would all put it on a plastic form. They had different size forms, and they would stand back with their clipboards and go, yep, that's a size medium. And I'd lean in and I'd go, ask her how she feels. So at Spanx, we put our product on women. My mother, my grandmother who's 90, my sister-in-law, Cassie, all of my friends, the girls at Spanx, we're testing it on real women. And we want to test it more than 2 seconds to say, yep, that looks like a medium.
I went online and looked up manufacturers that made undergarments and hosiery type products. And I called them on the phone and didn't get anywhere. And eventually I took a week off of work and drove around North Carolina begging all of these men, ironically, that were making our undergarments to help try to make this new type of undergarment. I went in unannounced. I had no appointment. So you can imagine how that went. Most of them escorted me out and said, good luck. I got a phone call about 2 weeks later from one of the manufacturer owners, and he said, Sarah, I have decided to help make your crazy idea. I ran it by my 3 daughters at the dinner table, and they told me I should give you a shot.
What am I going to do for the packaging? I thought as a consumer, I didn't know anything else. I'd never actually taken a marketing class either in my life. But I knew as a consumer, I was frustrated. I was going into the hosiery departments and everything looked the same. It was the same beige package or the same white package with the same half-naked woman that'd been on there for 30 years. And I couldn't tell what I was buying. So I said to myself, I'm going to do this different. I want it to be my favorite color, red. No one had ever done red in the hosiery space before. I wanted it to be bold, stand out. I knew that if I got a chance to be on the shelf with no money to advertise, it had to jump out and say, I'm new, I'm different, try me. So I put 3 animated, illustrated cartoon women on the package, which had also never been done before. There had only ever been photography on these hosiery packages. I was working on it every night after work on my friend's computer. She had just finished graphic design school. So I would come home and we would sit side by side, and I was cutting out lips and eyes, and I was very excited about how to make it design-wise. I wanted it to feel like you were buying a present for yourself instead of a commodity that we dreaded. We had people wear it for a week, wash it, tell us if it rolled, did it move, did it stay in place, how did you feel? Very concerned with Spanx garments and how they made you feel.
Growing up, my dad used to encourage my brother and me to fail. So at the dinner table, he would actually ask us, what did you fail at this week? And if we didn't have something to tell him, he would actually be disappointed. And I can remember coming home from school and being like, Dad, I tried out for this and I was horrible. And he'd be like, way to go, and high-five me. And it was such a gift what he was doing. I didn't realize it at the time, but he was redefining failure for me. And so failure became not about the outcome, but about not trying. And So, the fear of failure, as we all know as entrepreneurs, is one of the greatest fears in life. It's one of the things that stops us in our tracks and keeps us from trying something. And so I incorporate that in my philosophy at Spanx. We celebrate failures, we talk about them, we have oops meetings where I'll announce the oops that I have, and sometimes we have fun with it. We'll even attach theme songs to our oops and we'll play them in front of the whole company. But I think it's just so important to try to get the people that you work with to take risks and to be entrepreneurial and not live in a place of, I want to protect my job and feel like I'm not safe if I make mistakes.
Okay, so I've written the patent, I'm submitting it. I have the prototype, I'm getting it almost perfect to where I want it to be. I gotta come up with a name. So I had been writing down on scrap pieces of paper for that entire year really bad names. In my car, on a plane, pulling off the side of the road. And finally, I narrowed down my thinking on what I wanted to name my invention. By this, I recognized that the two most recognized names in the world at the time were Kodak and Coca-Cola. So I started playing with them in my mind. Why are they the two most recognized names in the world? What do they have in common? And they both have a significant K sound to them. And I actually had read that the man who started Kodak liked the K sound so much that he put the K in the beginning and the end of the word and started playing with letters in the alphabet to come up with the word Kodak. I also knew that Coca-Cola had such a strong K presence to it. And I have a bunch of friends that are stand-up comedians, and it's just this weird trade secret among comedians that the K sound will make your audience laugh. So it was determined. For good luck, my invention was going to have the K sound in it. And I added it. I decided, okay, once I decided that, I was clearer on my thinking for the name. It came to me while sitting in traffic in Atlanta. I got very lucky. I was sitting there and just the word Spanx came across the dashboard. And at the very last second, I went home and I knew it was right. And I changed the KS to an X at the last minute because I had done research that made-up words do better for products than real words do, and they're also easier to trademark. I didn't tell one person the name. I got on uspto.gov, which stands for United States Patent and Trademark Office.gov, which was my best friend at the time. I was always on that website. I did a search. I entered my credit card, and for, I think, $250 or $300, I hit send, and I owned the name Spanx. A month later, I got it in the mail.
What role do you hope the Sarah Blakley Foundation will play in the empowerment of women?
Well, my ultimate goal is that the male and female energy on the planet becomes balanced. So I feel like, was that something?
That was a snap.
Oh, was that a snap? Okay. All right. Well, good. That one person who agrees with me. Yes. Where are you? So anyway, the male and female energy on the planet more balanced. And the reason why I say energy, I mentioned earlier, is that we all have the male and the female energy inside of us. And I feel like the feminine has been pretty squashed for a long time on our planet, and it's not serving the greater whole. So what can I do in my short lifetime to elevate the feminine? And that's what the foundation is focused on, in how can I help be elevating and supporting that. And I take my opportunity as a woman in this country so seriously. And I think part of the reason that I do is because I got to watch my mom and my grandmothers and their lack of options. And that was really hard. And so, we've been on the planet for thousands of years or millions of years, depending on who you ask and what you think. But the bottom line is my mom is only 22 years older than me. And my mom had about 3 or 4 options only afforded to her because she was a woman. So in the grand scheme of life and how long we've been on Earth, I'm like, I made it by 22 years? Like, what? You're kidding me. So I feel like a lot of my courage and, I'm scared of a lot of things. I'm afraid to fly. I'm afraid of heights. Like, I've got all kinds of things. But I feel like where I get my courage is that knowing and thinking about, I'm a woman born in the right place at the right time. I don't want to squander that.
How do you constantly find ways to invent new products, and where does your inspiration come from?
I think of a lot of ideas at traffic lights. I think of them all the time in different places, and I think it's part of just being hyper observant. I like to find white space. I pay attention to what are things that haven't evolved and why. You know, like there's certain things in our society that updates itself and changes and you know, constantly, and then there's certain things that it's not. And so I'll ask myself questions all day, every day. It's just the way my brain works. Like I could even be looking at a table and be like, why is the table like that? When was the table first created? Is that the actual best design for a table? Or could there be something different? And you know, Spanx went into men's, and that was randomly how that happened was because I got curious that the man's undershirt was created in 1918 and no one had paid any attention to it since. It was literally the same thing. And so I just, you know, talked to my brother and my husband about it, and their undershirts, the neck stretched out, or they were boxy and bulky underclothes. And I thought, oh, I'm just gonna add a little bit of Lycra to the cotton undershirt for men, and so the neck won't stretch out, and I'm gonna taper it in at the waist. So ideas come to me like that. Ideas
clearly,
are, you know,
clearly I love it.
I have my assistant, who's my right hand, Lisa. She's been my right hand for 16 years, can attest to this. But I have 99 pages. I don't know why it's 99, but she told me the other day it's 99 pages, single space typed of ideas. I need one more idea. So I think of ideas constantly on airplanes and car, you know, talking to somebody, and I email it to myself, and then I just keep them and log them.